Welcome to the Wellness Plus podcast, brought to you by wellnessplus.tv. I'm your host, Karina Rachel, and I'm joined today by Chandler Rose, licensed massage therapist. Thank you so much for joining me, Chandler.
Thank you so much for having me back again. I always love being here.
Awesome. So I was hoping that you could talk a little bit today about pain. And, I think for so many people out there that are experiencing, whether it's just the usual stuff like, back pain or headaches and kind of these common types of pain that a lot of people experience, there's this feeling like pain is a mystery. And the idea of reducing our pain or relieving our pain, I'm hoping that you can just talk a little bit about things people can do to reduce things like back pain and headaches, and maybe some of the, common causes of pain, so that we can just hopefully solve the mystery of pain a little bit, or at least give people some real solutions that they can use to help themselves out of pain.
Sure. Yeah, I love talking about pain and helping people in pain. It is a very mysterious topic with a lot of different elements to it that can be involved. The first thing that comes to mind is actually position during sleep. I find that a lot of people don't think much about how they're sleeping because by the time we actually get there, we just want to crash.
Right.
But for me personally, a really cool tool for limiting low back pain if you're a side sleeper, because a lot of the pain I see is either shoulder or hip, is putting a pillow between your knees.
Oh yeah, that's something that I do.
Yay. Yeah.
I actually feel a big difference.
It really helps. And it's one of those funny things that when you start doing it, you feel like you always have to do it because it helps you. And so getting into a routine of creating a comfortable space for sleeping. And it isn't just about comfort or loving maybe the depth of your mattress, but thinking about physically what your sleep patterns are. A lot of it comes from being a little kid, or being an infant, or even, gestationally, how we're positioned. So having some thought around what your sleep patterns are. I do notice that a lot of people sleep on one shoulder. So having enough pillows where you can hug a pillow, you can put one between your knees. If you're a side sleeper, you can do one under a top knee and then the other leg is straight. If you're a back sleeper, or if you can practice naps or resting on your back, make sure your feet and knees are elevated. Even the practice of changing the blood flow. There's a yoga posture called waterfall, which is just having your feet up on a wall. But you don't even need to go that far. But, so much of what we do is standing or sitting in a position with our shoulders forward, our head forward, this kind of very active posture. And the posture of creating space for your joints and also lifting your knees and legs helps the blood actually flow the opposite way.
Wow.
So I would say the first kind of easy adjustment one can make is creating a really healthy sleep practice. And maybe you will always be a shoulder sleeper. Maybe you'll always have kind of a funny posture in your sleep. But I do notice a lot of people that wake up with like a funny neck. It's due to, a lot of stress during the day. Maybe it's due to a posture that has them, looking at a cell phone all the time, or using that thumb to text, or a computer, or driving. So creating a space in your sleep, whether it's the pillow, that's kind of my magical tool. Or stretching before bedtime. Also, we go to sleep very tense. So creating a practice before bed, something simple, a few minutes a day, on a yoga mat, doing a little stretching, or even just on your bed, and being in a position where your neck is flat against your pillow or your mattress, and you're thinking about your spine being straight and really grounding into the space that you're on. Mm-hmm. And then again, like elevating the feet and knees is really helpful for low back pain. So
do you mean like, actually maybe stacking up some pillows underneath your knees when you sleep?
You could. For me, I'm a side sleeper, so sleeping on my back is a challenge. However, when I can sleep like that, I wake up, even if it's just a few hours, like a chunk of time, I wake up feeling like my body is so much more relaxed. Yeah. So if you can get yourself comfortable enough as you're falling asleep to try sleeping on your back with your knees elevated, it's a really cool practice that you can do while you're sleeping.
Right.
But it's not easy to change something that you've done forever. So
right. And it's not easy to change what you do in the middle of the night while you're sleeping. But as a simple practice that people can think about, considering having additional pillows, or, they actually make pillows specifically for between the knees now. I just use like a regular pillow or whatever. Right. But, and looking at the pillow that you use under your neck, I think everyone's just different. Like I'm a small pillow person. Right. And if I stay in a hotel or something and there's that big, thick pillow, I will almost always wake up with a neck ache.
Right.
But little simple things like, hey, maybe consider a different pillow or a pillow between the knees, a couple minutes of stretching before bed. I mean, that's something that I just kind of do without even thinking about it. Like I lay down and it's like my body is like beckoning me to like, hey, do some stretching. So I'll actually just, while I'm laying in bed, I'll lift my legs up in the air, kind of like that waterfall pose or legs up the wall, but I'll just do it in air.
Right.
And I'll usually do a little of the kind of like figure 4 stretches. And I mean, it's just kind of become like my little thing that I do at night while I'm laying in bed. And then as I start feeling my muscles feeling more relaxed, and then I start like laying down to really fall asleep, I feel different than I did before. So it's interesting how like that physical stretching and physical movement kind of, it has like an effect on our nervous system.
It does.
Right?
And just touching in on screens too. We've talked about this before, but turning off, if you're someone that falls asleep with the TV on, I do it on occasion if, I'm in the mood for watching a movie or something, but making a point to shut your screens off and, push them away from you, and having a little bit of time before you fall asleep where you're just in a quiet, relaxed space. So you have your whole day, all the events that led you to where you are, but then you're going into your sleep time more relaxed and hopefully in a better postural position, which will help you when you wake up to not be in as much pain if it is due to that kind of thing.
Right. And then also I think it's important to kind of note that, the time that we are asleep is really like the main time that our body is able to go in and just take care of all of the stuff that it couldn't do while we were moving at 100 miles a minute all throughout our day.
Exactly.
So healing and repairing damaged tissues, everything from, they say that our cells are, they're just in a constant state of reproduction and replenishing.
Right.
So this perspective of getting really good sleep as your first measure, because you're going to feel better. Right. You're going to feel better when you wake up, but then you're also creating this very healthy environment for your body to take care of all the healing and repairing that it needs to do. And largely when people are skimping on their sleep, or they're not getting a good quality of sleep because the TV is on or whatever, like you mentioned, the body is being prevented from doing all of this really important kind of healing and repair work. And I think that I mean, clearly sleep is an entire topic we could dedicate to, but from the perspective of people that want to reduce their pain levels, just realizing that the simple things you do to improve your quality of sleep and hopefully sleep in a healthier position is a really good place to start.
It is, for sure. I would say probably the next kind of idea or tip for me, and what I tell my clients, is notice where your pain is. And that's something you can do before you fall asleep or when you wake up. Just noticing. And if you don't have pain, it could be because there are a lot of people out there that don't complain of any pain. And then I work on them and whoa, there's some, work on them, meaning do massage. And then it's, uncovering all these spots that are actually really sore. So if you're not someone that experiences pain, but you're someone that feels tension, the idea of just laying in a still position and scanning one's body and feeling maybe any misalignments or places where there are more kind of tense areas or more congestion. For me as a massage therapist, I feel my forearms sometimes. I almost feel like I don't feel pain in them, but I almost feel like kind of like they're a little bit warmer, and like there's just like I know there's stuff in there, and if I were to go in there and work on it or have someone else work on it, it would be painful. Right. But the idea of starting with noticing your pain and figuring out what spots are there, because sometimes that even in itself is mysterious. Someone with low back pain could feel something like in their glute, like in a deep hip kind of place, but actually their hamstrings are super tight and they're pulling on that area. So just doing a little investigation of where your pain is and what you believe you're doing every day to cause that. If it's work, if it's computer, if it's posture, if it's driving, maybe you can't limit that kind of activity, but being aware of how tight those muscles are is a good place to start. So sleep position, and then acknowledging where your pain is and how you can effectively change that pain.
And I think that you're exactly right. If we are honest with ourselves, so for me, that would be, I notice a lot of neck tension for myself. And I know that it is from a lot of like leaning down and looking at my phone. And I spend so much time texting with people, scheduling presenters, it's constant. And I notice that. So I've tried to, make an effort in my day of like, holding the phone up so that I'm not doing this crazy thing.
Right.
Or, whenever I can do something on a computer instead of on my phone.
Right.
Try to do that as much as possible, because even though sitting at the computer isn't really that much better, I do feel that it's not as bad as like leaning down and being on my cell phone.
Well, and the creating variety is really helpful with pain when you're talking about any subject of pain, especially posture. So just changing it up, like you said, going from the cell phone to the computer, it's a different position. It's also different visual stimulation, or maybe it's in a space where you can actually focus versus for me when I'm on my phone and I'm like running around maybe in a city and I have my little girl with me, it's like not the best time to be working on my phone, but sometimes you can't help it. But if you can designate work time to being a little more ergonomical or a little more healthy in how you're actively working, just the acknowledgement is huge as far as pain is concerned. The acknowledgement of our postures that are so repetitive and not natural to us.
Yeah.
And where that pain is coming from with that.
And I think that's a really, important piece of our little, pain puzzle, so to speak, are those repetitive motions.
Right.
And, we definitely live in a day and age where there's a lot of repetitive motions that most of us are doing. And we think most commonly about, typing on a computer, driving a car, sitting. Most of us are, we're just sitting all day. And, I think when they talk about, like they've been saying that like sitting, it's the new smoking, like sitting is just as bad for you as smoking. And I think it kind of, like there's two pieces there. So there's like what sitting is actually doing to your body and the different muscles that it pulls on and whatever. But then there's also just the component of like how much you're doing it.
Right.
And how often.
Sedentary.
So, one of the tips that I give in a lot of my health coaching is just encouraging people to split up the day. And I'm a big fan of the standing desk riser thing for people that have to be at a desk for long periods of time.
Right.
Because it's not about that you're suddenly going to start standing for 5 hours a day.
Right.
But it's just breaking up the repetitive motion.
Exactly.
So even if you only rise up your desk and stand for, 5 minutes.
Yes.
Once an hour or once every 2 hours. Like just breaking up the repetitive motion with something different,
exactly,
has such a positive effect.
Right. That kind of makes me think about what I would do next if I were to have pain right now. And I would instruct someone that can isolate where their pain is and figure out how to manipulate those muscles and stretch them if possible. And if you're not someone that is experiencing pain, but you just have tension and you have to be, at an office all day, or you have to be wherever you are, maybe you're driving all day for work. But if you can find, some self-care stretches, even if it's just 1 minute of, pulling your head to one side and allowing your neck to stretch in an opposite position of what it is. Even deeper than that, on a massage perspective, being able to, if there's an area of your body that you can actually touch, some areas are harder to work on than others. It's not easy to give yourself a back massage with your own hands. It's just not. But if you have forearm tension, which a lot of us do from computers or cell phones, and we don't even realize until we get a massage, oh my gosh, my forearms are so tight and sore. There's so much pain there. And maybe that's actually coming from the neck, or they're related. But manipulating an area like your forearm, if you're someone that is at a desk or working on a computer using your hands, maybe you're a musician, and you have strong hands and you can do, some work on your forearms, just simple squeezing. You don't need to be a licensed massage therapist to intuitively learn how to massage yourself in a healing way.
Right. Yeah, and I'll actually use my elbow sometimes in the forearm, and actually after I'm playing guitar, I'll use my elbow in my hand or whatever. And and it's awesome because from this, position, kind of using my elbow to massage, the other hand, my right arm is actually stays pretty relaxed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not pushing with this arm. I'm using this hand to push into my elbow. But it's amazing. And I just really gotten into working on myself before I practice the guitar, and then while I'm playing, taking time to stretch my arms up overhead. I find that just having, again, that repetitive motion of my arms forward, just holding my arms back and trying to stretch my shoulders out the other way.
Yeah.
It is the difference between me being able to practice for 20 or 30 minutes and then I have to stop because my back is hurting and I can't take it anymore, or I'm able to sit there for a lot longer and then I get done and I feel good rather than worse.
Yeah.
So inserting self-care, stretching, self-massage throughout your day whenever you can.
Yeah, whenever you can. And people kind of look at me a lot what are you doing with your neck? And it's they don't know I'm a massage therapist, but I work on myself all the time. And
Yeah.
being a massage therapist is not easy on my body, and I couldn't do what I do if my body were just this tight ball of pain. And there are lots of jobs out there that are so deeply physical, and if they aren't physical, on the other flip side is they're stuck. So anything stuck or anything repetitive or anything really deeply physical will involve a certain level of kind of soothing and, loosening those muscles to create more space and more circulation in the body, which helps us to get out of that pain cycle. Because really, pain is just a message. It's a message from our bodies telling us something's going on, to not ignore it. With massage, I always try to tell people with the really tender areas, because they're the people that know that going there will help them. And that's the same with self-massage. Going into a space, maybe it's your feet are really tender, but the feet are really easy to work on for yourself. But going into those painful places and creating space and warming up the tissue and loosening the tissue, it's all about creating these little new spaces and stretches for these tiny little fibers. And if you can change the quality of whatever that tissue is feeling like, then that will most likely affect the whole and affect that sort of pain cycle or that pain message that's coming through.
Interesting. There was something that you said yesterday. We were filming a video that was like, how to help a friend with headaches and DIY techniques that you can do for yourself for a headache. And one of the things you said was that, going into those areas of tension where it feels really, really tender. And what that means, if for anyone who doesn't know, is like, sometimes you're getting work, somebody's working on you, they're, kind of touching around the body, and then there will be a certain spot that just, it feels more tender. It's more sensitive. It can't take as much pressure without like kind of sending off the siren in your brain.
Right.
So you're saying going into those tender places, those muscles that are kind of like screaming at you, they're really tender and sensitive, that's the area that can create change.
Exactly.
So you go into that difficult place or that tense muscle that feels really tense and tender when you're stretching it, but like that is the realm of changing the body, of changing the condition.
It is, and your body wants to move. I mean, we're born to move. We're these incredible beings that can run and move, and we're so intricate in the way we're all put together, and your body is asking for that area to be loosened up. And you can look at research on all sorts of internal conditions that will show up as we age. And a lot of it has to do with circulation or a stagnancy, which means it's a place that hasn't had a lot of movement. So massage, I mean, say you are sedentary or that you're, whatever your circumstance is, that you can't move a lot. Massage is a really great way to get that circulation happening, which will really help with pain. Now, there's chronic pain and there's acute pain. And chronic pain is something that has been there more than a couple months at least. And that's something that responds really well to deep tissue therapy. Because those muscles are essentially just tight and they want to be stretched and loosened up. And so that dealing with chronic pain and massage, it's like one just almost is like the cure for the other.
Wow.
And then with acute pain, that comes from an injury that just happened. So say you bumped your knee and or you hit your elbow super hard, like I just hit my elbow a little bit. but that kind of thing, that kind of pain, that intense new pain doesn't respond to massage. So whenever I'm talking about pain, even if I don't say it, I'm more talking about chronic pain, which is something that most of us just carry around and we don't even know it until we get in there ourselves or have someone else push on it. And then acute is going to be something like hot or fiery, like an injury, which I would say, just nurture it, cool it. Massage is going to bring heat to the area. Also a really great remedy for chronic pain, heat. I soak in baths. That's my best tool, my cheapest tool, even though it uses a bunch of water, and I even struggle with that part of it. But it's something that I give myself because when your body is warmer, it's more flexible. And if you have places of pain that are really chronically tight and tense and cold, and you warm that area up, and then you go in and you massage it a little bit, or maybe you're just soaking your feet in some hot water. Maybe it's as simple as that. That warming of the tissue allows all that kind of stuckness to relax, and new fresh blood can circulate through those areas and definitely take down the pain, if not eliminate it completely.
Very interesting, because we've heard so many times from people, take a hot bath, but no one's ever really explained it to me like that before. Like, hey, the heat comes in, it helps your muscles let go, it helps your muscles be more flexible. So something like, taking a hot bath, or even just soaking your feet in a hot bath,
or if you're a shower person, I'm not against those at all, but I do think there's something to be said about laying down if you have a big enough tub for whatever your size is. I know a lot of my clients say, oh, I'm too tall, or and tubs are really not designed for soaking. But there was a time where that was practiced, and a lot of cultures still practice it, and that's a big part of what they do is they soak their muscles. So even if the shower is what you have, you can use that too as hydrotherapy. You can let the shower kind of pound down on your shoulders and heat up your neck. And I also think there's something to be said about having an isolated area of pain, and if it's chronic, submerging your whole body in water. Maybe it's going swimming, maybe it's jumping in a cold pool. Also, that can be helpful because you're changing the temperature of your body, which really is a good remedy for any kind of pain. Temperature change is really good as long as it's not an injury. Temperature, any kind of water element, there's different options out there.
And then what about like alternating cold and heat? Because that's something that I think we hear about a lot in like the realm of physical therapy. They'll talk about, alternating ice and heat.
Yeah.
Would that be something that...
I think it's an interesting practice. I don't actually recommend it very often, but I do think it can be utilized for the right scenario. Your body, if it's cooled, is naturally going to warm up once you're out of whatever you're submerged in. So if you took like an ice bath, that heat change, is gonna offer you something. And same with, if you do like a hot pack on something, I would say generally for chronic pain, heat is your best remedy.
Okay.
For acute pain, cold is your best remedy, like bonking yourself or like
or twisting your ankle.
Exactly. But I know that the hot cold is a cool concept, and if you have the chance to go to a soaking place or a spa of sorts, a lot of times a really good one will have several different spaces that are different temperatures. And so you can soak in a very kind of medium, kind of like a bathtub kind of thing, and then you can go in a really hot steam, or you can get into a cold plunge for a second, or even just dumping a thing of water over your head. I mean, all of that's hydrotherapy, and it is really helpful. If it's chronic pain, the changing of the temperature is helpful for sure. So
wow.
I mean, I've only done that a few times in my life, but I definitely left that place being a changed person. Like, I remember my ears felt different, like sound everything was enhanced because my body, the temperature had changed so much, and I'd probably released so much in my body in that time of soaking in a really warm tub and then doing the cold. And so yeah, there's room for that if you can make the time and effort. I also think hot and cold can be really good if you're just doing an isolated area, like your forearms. We're talking about forearms. And there's a lot of people that have really tight forearms. And if you can do an immersion bath or tub, one with ice and one with hot water, and you have really sore forearms and you can go back and forth, that's a really good way to use 2 different temperature elements to help relieve pain.
Wow, very cool. And then that kind of reminds me, yesterday when we were doing the video about headaches, you talked about using a cold pack on the back of the neck over the occiput, right where the neck kind of meets the skull, so to speak.
Right.
Yes. And that, I was like, man, that's such an awesome idea. I'll a lot of times do like a cool washcloth over my eyes and forehead.
Yes.
But I'm like, man, I definitely have to try that ice pack over the occiput for a headache.
Having a soft, movable ice pack on hand if you're someone that gets tension headaches or really stiff neck, it is really good. And I tend to stay away from heat in the head because a lot of people that have headaches, it's due to the fact that they are thinking and focusing so much. And there's all this energy and circulation going to their head. Right. And there's probably maybe other chemical and elements involved, water intake, acidity, food, other things, chemical, whatever. But using cold on the head is pretty cool because there's been a lot of research done on actually these helmets that were created that would circulate water. And these helmets were done with sleep research. And turns out these people that wore these kind of circulating cool water helmets on their head were falling asleep faster.
I want one.
Deeper.
You just explaining it, I'm like, I need one of these helmets. That sounds amazing. It sounds like it would just feel so good. Yeah.
So cold on the head, good. Definitely more therapeutic than using cold for like a low back issue or I think anything involving the internal organs in the center, you want to stick with warmth. You want to stick with making things warmer. Now, like I said, you're dealing with the thinking center when it comes to the head and headaches and neck pain. So having an ice pack on hand is such a good tool for that, especially women. I feel like we also have hormonal changes that can cause headaches, and the cold can be a really easy tool to just, at least decrease the level of pain that's happening there.
You mentioned earlier that the most common things you see among your massage clients are shoulder pain and hip pain. So I was kind of hoping we could maybe take each of those little avenues and, I guess we'll start with tense shoulders.
Right.
That is probably, something that I can definitely relate to. I would imagine most of the people listening can also relate to that.
Yeah.
What would you, recommend to people, or what do you recommend, to your massage clients for reducing shoulder pain?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Most of us have shoulder issues. I would say 9 times out of 10 people come in saying, work between my shoulder blades, massage between my shoulder blades. And that area would be on either side of the spine, which does really help people if you can get a massage, or if you can use a tool or watch one of our videos where you can actually use like a therapy ball or a block to work in those areas. But I also think that with any kind of pain, there's something to be said about the mind-body connection. So most of the time when there is kind of this need or want for work or massage or attention on that area, it's due to a forward shoulder posture, which means your shoulders are forward and your pecs are tight. And then your trapezius in the back and other muscles involved are actually stretched. So it's almost like you imagine like a turtle shell, and that's, what people want to work on, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's their shell, which is good. But if you have all this tension in the front that's pulling the shoulders forward, just working on the back is not going to fix the pain. So I would encourage people to think about the posture in their chest and to figure out a way to stretch their pecs, for one. You can do simple door stretches. Maybe I need to do a video on just that area because it is a mysterious area. So doing pec stretches in a way that is healthy for the body, finding a corner of the room where you can kind of lean in and really open up your pecs. And also the act of opening your palms up towards the ceiling if you're laying down or if you're falling asleep. And even the act of having your palms up,
because it rotates the shoulder out.
It rotates the shoulders back. And then, in addition to that, another really easy technique for kind of this shoulder back issue is massaging the pecs. And you can easily massage that area with your own hands because it's really easy to reach. And you can also do the anterior neck, which, anytime I talk about pain, I'm going to address it in a holistic theory, kind of, thinking about that we are this big pulley system, and you can't just loosen one thing up and have everything else be in perfect alignment. You have to almost kind of trick the body out of pain. So with shoulder issues, a lot of times it's someone that is really right dominant. And so I like to talk to people about, what the potential causes of the pain are. Are you carrying a purse on one side? Do you have this big heavy bag that you haul around? Maybe you have a backpack, but you only sling it on one shoulder. And then you do all your whatever with your right hand. Yeah. What's your left hand doing? The acknowledgement of being really dominant on one side can also help you to see where that tension is building from. And if you can get massage and do self-massage on both sides, a lot of times you realize that one side is indeed compensating for the other. So anytime someone has like a deep shoulder issue, I encourage them to, really open their pecs and get this type of work happening. If you're someone that's on the run, but you can find a good corner in your house to kind of lean up against. We also have this very intricate rib cage, and most of us that complain about knots in the back. In massage, you hear that a lot, the term, I have these knots in my back, can you work them out? A lot of times those are actually ribs that are out of place, and they're just like poking out into the back, which most of us live with probably 2 or 3 ribs out of place on each side that are just a little out of place, and it's due to this forward shoulder posture. So again, any kind of pec, chest opening you can do will help decrease that sort of tension in the back.
Wow. And because that is so interesting too. It reminds me a lot of yoga. I think there's so many yoga postures and movements, and they talk about like heart opening,
right?
And opening across the chest and lifting up with your chest. And then there's even, poses where you're like would hold your hands, hold your arms behind your back, twists and things like that. And I have definitely noticed since I've started, doing more yoga and just like trying to just integrate the poses into my life. So I'm even like doing stretches when I feel that my body needs them.
Right.
And you're definitely right. There's a big correlation between not only trying to like stop the forward shoulder posture and just trying to sit with better posture and think about, trying to keep the shoulders open, but stretching out those muscles on the front of the body, of the upper chest, the pectoral muscles. I mean, it just feels amazing.
It does.
And after I do, maybe it's like kind of a gentle back bend kind of thing. Like I can't do a full on back bend, but I'll kind of do like the camel pose. You're just kind of like gently opening the chest. And when I get done doing those kind of heart opener poses, I'll feel like decreased tension, all the way around, like my neck, my shoulders. And I'm just kind of like, wow, kind of crazy that, you think you need somebody to like dig into your shoulder with their elbow. But interestingly, just like stretching out my pecs, and you're totally right, doing like self-massage. And when you start, at least for me, when I start kind of palpating around, through these muscles, I mean, it's super tender.
It's super tender.
And it's way more tender than my shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
I can like literally take somebody digging in with their elbow in the top of my trap and be like, oh, it feels amazing.
Right.
If they did that right here, like I wouldn't be able to even take like a tenth of the pressure.
And it's because there's so much more stretch going on, and your body's so used to this, and you can handle that being pushed on. But up here, it's the opposite. It's that, it's used to being, forward. And even myself, and when you talk about yoga practice, you can really get into the organ and emotional component and spiritual component of doing heart openers or chest openers. And even if you're not into all that, that's fine. But on an energetic level and on a physiological level, the more open this part can be, the more you can breathe.
Yeah.
And
it's
breathing
so true.
deeper. And I think about the rib cage, and I talk about it a lot because if you can loosen up the intercostal muscles, which are these little intricate muscles that connect the ribs, and you can go in and you can loosen those up, or even the idea of loosening these little muscles between the ribs. When those muscles are loosened, you can take a bigger breath than you've taken in a really long time. And so we do often with pain, especially if pain symptoms are coming up, we've been carrying this around for a while because the body's first message isn't pain. The body's first message is tension. And there's a difference between feeling actual pain and just feeling tight. So to prevent pain, I would say really make a point to address your body when it's tight.
Yeah.
And then you're not actually going as far as being in pain. Because when you're in pain, your body is actually in crisis. It needs you to stop and slow down and kind of figure out what the heck is going on. Because that's just a message your body is, telling you, this is too much. We need to decrease whatever this is and slow down.
Right. We've just kind of forgotten that, pain isn't just there to, drive us crazy and be annoying and make our day harder. I mean, it provides a really important purpose from a survival standpoint.
Yep.
That it's the only way our bodies can communicate with us.
Right.
It's not like you're sitting there and you're like, oh, you know what? I think my liver's communicating with me right now. And so the only way our hamstrings or our glutes or our pectoral muscles or whatever, the only way they can communicate with us is through pain.
Right.
And so what you're saying is that by the time you're feeling pain, and not just like, oh, it's kind of tense, but you're feeling like significant pain, that your body is already in crisis from that time. You've already been creating a problem and, perpetuating that problem for probably a long time.
Yes.
And so now your body's panicking to try and get you to change.
Exactly.
And so the more pain you're experiencing, the stronger your body is just trying to be like, hey, you person up there.
Yeah.
And then slow down.
Slow down.
Change what you're doing.
Breathe.
Which is, one of those things that, obviously our body breathes without us having to think about it.
Right.
But when we slow down,
the intentional breath is powerful, especially with pain.
Yeah.
Especially with head pain. That's a big one. We talked a lot about headaches. But head pain, breath is really important, because if you're holding your breath, a lot of times, you're driving or you're focusing, or maybe you just got some crazy information you need to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah, and
when
when
you just start holding your breath,
Yeah,
so.
when you're really feeling a lot of pain as well, I'll notice that I'm holding my breath. Or I'm just kind of like, whatever, and then
Oxygen helps. It really does.
and it's free.
It is.
People kind of roll their eyes at me when I try to talk about like breathing and all the benefits of breathing. And I'm like, why are you going to roll your eyes? I'm trying to tell you about a solution anyone can use literally anytime. Like literally there's no time at which you couldn't breathe unless maybe you're like doing some kind of underwater, how long can I hold my breath thing. Okay. Yeah. Aside from that, you can do it anytime, anywhere. It's completely free. It doesn't cost you anything. And I mean, would you say that the breath is one of the best ways for reducing pain? I mean, in terms of how important oxygen is for our body.
I would say yes. I would say breathing, and it allows you to get back into your body and out of your mind. Yeah. And probably next to that, I would say would be drinking water. Because a lot of us get into this stress cycle, or maybe we're living off of coffee, and I really love coffee, so I'm not saying anything bad about it, but fluids, healthy fluids, and thinking about the kind of water you're drinking, and are you drinking enough? Are you drinking less because you don't want to have to pee as often? Like, what is the reason? Because if you're in pain, you most likely need water, and you most likely need a slower breath, and you most likely need to slow your whole body down.
Wow. Yeah, and, again, water, great example of something people kind of roll their eyes at. But at the same time, like most people are probably walking around dehydrated. Right. And, when I start to get a headache, the first thing I'll do is just slam, a huge amount of water. I'm a big fan of drinking, like, room temperature water or whatever, because I can't really slam ice water very quickly. But a big glass of room temperature water, and probably 8 times out of 10, my headache will go away. And I'm like, woohoo, awesome. It was just that I needed to drink water,
Yeah.
So again, it's like one of those things that it's not difficult to do. It's just difficult to make a habit of it.
Right. And there are staples in things that we like to drink. And a lot of times, even with myself, it's like, oh, I only have room for this one thing. But like, have whatever it is you have, and then have water too, because you can continue to supplement water, because nothing will really replace that. I mean, if it's a fresh organic juice and all the components are, very nutrient dense, awesome. That's hydrating and nutrient dense. So it's offering your body lots of vitamins and minerals. But, drinking soft drinks or drinking juice or drinking coffee all day long and never drinking an actual glass of water, if you're in pain, I believe you, because water is important when it comes to pain and keeping yourself out of pain.
Right. Yeah. And they talk about, like 70 to 80% or something of our body is water. For me, what kind of like made the aha moment for why water is so important is that when you study the biochemistry, like every single chemical reaction has water in it. Like it's just part of literally every single chemical reaction. So you start to kind of think like, well, how many chemical reactions is my body doing at any given time? And it's probably thousands, if not millions, if you talk about like every single cell in every tissue, and it's just constant. And I started going like, oh, like my body needs the water so that it can do the chemical reactions it needs to do. Right. Whether it's trying to, heal a damaged tissue or come in and, just helping to replenish my skin cells and all of our different organs and everything. They're just constantly replenished. Right. Not to mention, breaking down the nutrients in our food. Right. Or helping the body to detoxify from those negative things that come in. There's just so many things. So did you have anything else about shoulder pain? Because I'm excited to get into the hip issues, because low back pain is something that I experience a lot. So
Yeah, I would just say anytime I talk about a specific area, and shoulders, they bug a lot of us, but to really think about it as your whole body, because maybe that is a weak place where the pain is showing up. And I get a lot of these shoulder clients that are like, just work on my back, just work on my shoulder. And to all of those people, I would encourage you to massage your entire body from head to toe. And if you get a treatment, to get a full body massage, because you can ask that person to work for 20 or 30 minutes on your shoulder, but get everything else touched in on, because it does a lot of different things. It helps with the pulley system, right? So on a physiological level, there's change. But it helps the blood flow, all the things you were just mentioning. And there's something about getting away from the pain area and working somewhere else.
Just to bring your attention
away
from the area that's driving you crazy.
And it's much more relaxing than getting a treatment on just one body part. Now, I know that, sometimes that's what's necessary for what's going on, but I really encourage people, if you're going to get a treatment or a massage, or if you're going to lay down and do self-massage, really try to think about, even if it's just an intention, relaxing everything else around that one part that hurts. Because if you're just trying to relax that one part, it's probably not gonna work. But if you go through your whole body and scan everything from head to toe, most likely the pulley system, the pain signal, a lot of it will change and shift, and you'll realize, wow, it's maybe my right hip, and it's not actually my left shoulder, and that left shoulder is actually, it's actually my hip is twisted and I feel it in that shoulder. Like I said, that's maybe the weakest place where you're feeling it, but it may not be the actual cause for it.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that Melissa Lemunyan actually said in one of the pain relief stretching videos she was making, and she talked about how a lot of times you can think on the diagonal.
Right.
So if it's your right shoulder, that maybe you should just work on your left hip, your low back, and you just kind of as a guide for kind of thinking about how you're going to approach this, thinking on a diagonal. So I started trying that. And I started freaking noticing that she was totally right.
Yeah.
And when I'm in those days that I'm feeling like, oh God, my right shoulder is just crazy, I'll do these little hip circles that she taught, and just kind of even with my own hand, massaging into my hip on the back, and you can do a lot to kind of work on yourself, when you have that pain in the hip. And interestingly, it would oftentimes help benefit the shoulder.
Yeah.
So I thought that was just really fascinating.
Yes.
About kind of thinking about
the diagonal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is important. So when we talk about it, just to go over that again, a lot of times when you see things coming up in one shoulder, you're going to see it in your opposite hip. So it will be on the flip side. So if your left shoulder, a lot of times your right hip is super tight.
Wow.
Now, for the body, we have patterns, and pain will often show up in the shoulders before the hips. So a lot of shoulder pain can actually come from the hips. So we should talk about that next.
Awesome. Yeah.
So low back pain, it's mysterious. It's mysterious in the way that it refers pain to people. Some people feel like it's their lower lumbar in the middle of their back. Some people feel it up kind of by where your bra strap would be, or your, kind of the middle, by those ribs. Some people will feel it down in their glute, and talk about this kind of sciatic kind of pain. I've researched low back pain a lot, and I've done a lot of isolating work where I'm just working the low back muscles to relieve that pain. And what I've realized with low back pain and with hip pain, a lot of it does come from the legs, which is kind of hard for people to take that in, because when they go and get a massage or when they feel themselves, they're like, no, it's right there. But the legs don't often refer pain like the back does. And so when your legs are really tight in the hamstrings and the glutes, for whatever reason, the pain will show up kind of like a hierarchy of pain. It will show up in the shoulder first, and then you're going to feel it in your hip. And then maybe if it gets bad enough, you're going to feel like a shooting down the leg and almost like a numbness kind of thing. And that is a good indicator that your hamstrings are really tight. So anyone dealing with low back pain, I would say take a look at how your hamstrings are feeling. And hamstrings are hard to stretch when they're tight. They're hard to stretch in general, I think, for myself and, talking to other people. So what I would say is if you can get body work for low back pain, get a practitioner that's willing to work your hamstrings and loosen them up. I myself like to use my knees. I climb on people, and that's not for everyone, but it's kind of like a shiatsu or Thai type work. And if you can use broad pressure along the hamstrings into the leg, you're essentially affecting that pulley system again. So you have these really, really long, banded, tight, ropey muscles pulling the leg and pulling the hip. And you're feeling it in your low back. But you take pressure on top of these long tube-like muscles, and you're creating like a tourniquet, and then you're taking the pressure off, and new blood can rush to that area, to that leg. A lot of people will say, oh, I have sciatica. Maybe a medical or Western type doctor diagnosed them with sciatic pain. Well, we all have our sciatic nerve and several nerves that run down the leg. But when the muscles are tight around that nerve, they're going to feel that sensation. Now, that doesn't mean that they have sciatica or they have any problem with their nerve. But most likely, the muscles around the nerve are constricting it and tight on top of it. So with low back pain, there's a few different things I'd recommend. I'd recommend getting your hamstrings worked in a deep way, getting your glutes worked on in a specific way. However, the glutes and hips tend to be really tender to touch, which is why, again, hamstrings are really easy, gentle way to access what's above it. So working that area is good. Also, any of the videos we offer where you can use a tool along the sacrum, which is the bone that you lay on kind of above your glutes, right? And you can use any sort of tool or therapy ball around that area. That's really good for low back pain and helpful for low back pain.
Yeah. Within your self-care program, I'm pretty sure that we did a whole video where you were showing like using a tennis ball. I think we had like a yoga block and stuff like that. And even with a traditional foam roller, I think that foam rolling the hamstrings is one of the easier things to do with a foam roller.
Exactly.
But that is definitely something that, you're so right. You don't usually sit there and be like, oh, my hamstrings are bothering me.
Right.
It's the back that, is feeling it. But once I'll like work on my hamstrings or foam roll out or whatever, or, even just doing, like some forward folds, but I really like to do like very generous bend in my knees.
Exactly. Always careful with the knees.
Yeah. And then, you can really feel yourself like working into the hamstrings. It really does help my back. It's kind of incredible. I kind of think about that song, from when we were a kid, right? And like the hip bone's connected to the leg bone. And,
exactly.
And it's hilarious, but it's also completely freaking true. You know? And we sometimes forget that, like, yes, everything's connected, and you can't, the same way that you can't spot reduce and weight loss, like that's kind of a common thing now. You're like, oh, you can't spot reduce and just you lose weight here or whatever.
Right.
I kind of think of the same thing when it comes to pain. You can't just work on one single area of the body and pretend like it exists in a vacuum.
Right.
Everything is connected. And, so this concept of, if you're wanting to get out of pain, you don't just try to spot reduce
right.
the one area, you remember that like, hey, you've got your spine, you know, connecting all of our different pieces together.
Right.
And then even once you get out from the spine, you can talk about, you know, your arms, your shoulder attachment, your hips, your knees, etc. But for me, just having this consideration
Right.
that it's all connected. And so when
That's
I
powerful.
am feeling really tense or tight, or I've actually got pain, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do some work on my feet because it's a really easy place to reference. You know, and whether you're doing like official reflexology or not, like most of the time, if I work on my feet a little bit or even just soak my feet in a hot tub or something, I will notice that the rest of my body feels significantly better.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought up feet because there are a lot of people out there that do not want you to touch their feet, which is fine because you can work on your own feet. And so much of the alignment of how our feet carry us. I mean, you can get into the Eastern side of reflexology, and it's intelligent, and there's a lot there and a lot of history and research around it, and I think there's some validity for sure. But even just physiologically, how our weight is distributed and what shoes we're wearing and the surface that we're on and how all that goes up into the rest of our body and how our spine is sitting on top of itself and how our head is sitting on top of the rest. And so nourishing and nurturing the feet definitely will help your alignment. It will help your hips. It will help your legs. It will help all of it. The feet are definitely an important part to address and should not be left out.
Right. And, you know, when we, you know, at the earlier part of this discussion, we were kind of talking about repetitive movements and how like just the repetitive movement, no matter if it's a good movement or bad movement, but just that we're doing the same things over and over. You know, I think about my feet and I'm like, wow, talk about the part of my body that's like, it's always the same. You know, whether you're sitting, whether you're standing, like your feet virtually are in the same position. And then, you know, from doing yoga, I've had a lot of awareness growing and like how I distribute my weight over my feet. And, you know, somebody even pointed out to me one time, they were like, oh yeah, I mean, you can just look at your shoes and you can see that you're putting your weight over on the side.
Right.
And she was like, and some people, you'll look at their shoes and you can see that they put all their weight inward.
Right.
And, you know, and I just kind of went, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know, how crazy. And so I started trying to like pay more attention to like standing more evenly over the feet and just trying to notice that I'm not like putting all my weight on the side or on the inside or on one foot.
Right.
And, you know, so that's like another big thing I've noticed with my hips. And also because I'm like 6 feet tall or whatever, I noticed that I had started this habit probably as a middle schooler or something of always standing like with like one hip kind of cocked to the side because I could kind of create the illusion that I wasn't as tall.
Right.
But I created all of these issues in my low back that like as I, got older, started getting older, I started noticing and I started paying attention to how I was standing. I noticed that I did this crazy thing where I like always just had my weight on one foot and, you know, just starting to make the intention that I'm going to try to notice that I stand evenly, that I, you know, and they talk about in yoga, the mountain pose. They really like break that down and how you stand and the alignment. And I thought, wow, that actually makes a really big difference.
Yeah. Acknowledgement of your body's position when it comes to pain is really powerful.
Yeah.
And even just listening to us talk and acknowledging, wow, maybe my low back pain is coming from my legs. You know, it's just, it's powerful even just knowing that your pain is not isolated to where it is. It's your whole body that needs a little love or relaxation or stretch. And that can eliminate that kind of pinnacle of wherever you're feeling it.
Right. And I think that, you know, realistically speaking, you know, the idea that we're going to never experience pain in our lives.
Right.
It's like pretty unrealistic. It's like saying like, oh yeah, just avoid stressful situations.
Right.
Like how am I going to go through my life avoiding stressful situations all the time? So it just kind of, creates the necessity that, how are we going to manage pain? How are we going to deal with pain? How are we going to take some responsibility in our lives for just doing what we can?
Right.
To try and support our body and keep it out of pain, like noticing our repetitive motions, noticing our breathing. We just kind of barely touched on that, but, that is, I think, such an important component, and just kind of reiterating that it's like completely free, completely available to you literally at any time.
Right.
To just breathe more deeply.
Yep.
Slow down.
Yes.
Take a break. Bringing your attention to the body, noticing what you're feeling, and, just kind of remembering that, there are so many things in this world that we can't do anything about. But what we're really kind of all about here, on the Wellness Plus podcast is helping people realize, actually, there's a lot of things that you can do to improve the situation. And even though there's a lot of stuff that we can't change and we can't help, there's probably a lot more that we can do if we just take the time to do it.
Yep.
Take the responsibility to do it.
Yeah.
And just kind of knowing that we're not powerless.
Right.
To improve our situation.
Exactly.
And so, you know what, Chandler, I will go ahead and let us wrap this one up for today, but I want to thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And I just would encourage people listening to check out your self-care program. Check out some of the videos we've done teaching simple massage techniques, so that if you do have a friend, a family member, heck, even a coworker, when I used to work in a cubicle, I had the person in the cubicle next to me, and we would work on each other's forearms.
Yeah.
On our lunch break and stuff.
A little goes a long way.
And it just made such a difference.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you so much for being here, and looking forward to all of our future podcasts.
Yay, me too. I love being here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I want to thank all of you for listening and for tuning in. I hope that you will check out some of Chandler's programs over on wellnessplus.tv, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video and or podcast. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon.